I am so pleased to be here with America's domestic defenders. We have a lot of people in uniform overseas this morning in Afghanistan and in Iraq and other parts of the world. And some of your folks, I think, are probably either in Japan now or on their way to Japan to try to help people in trouble. That's what you do. That's why I'm so very honored to be associated with the International Association of Firefighters and Domestic Defenders throughout this country. Most of you wear uniforms when you're on duty, and you are just as surely responsible for defending our country and Americans' security as those deployed overseas. I'm so pleased to be here with all of you. Harold Schaitberger, one of the great union leaders in America, and one of my very dear friends. I want to congratulate you on the job that you do. And Secretary Treasurer Miller, yes. And I want to thank also Kevin O'Connor for the work that he does, David Billy, and all of your officers. And Barry, congratulations on the work that you do, and Peter Gorman, is he keeping you straight?
Barely.
Barely. I was told, if you didn't hear, that the Chief of Staff is barely keeping Harold Schaitberger straight. None of you are surprised that it's just barely. As a matter of fact, some of you are surprised that it is anything, I know. But Harold Schaitberger does a great, great job for you. I don't know whether you noticed, but there was an election last November. I know none of you think it made much of a difference. That's because you've been asleep since then and haven't noticed. Elections have consequences. And very frankly, this election had consequences. And we're fighting those consequences today. As long as we've lived together as communities, we have relied on the bravery of a few individuals who step up to protect their neighbors and their families. You step up and choose responsibility. I was just talking to a number of those who represent our state. Andy Pantelis with the Prince George's County Firefighters, John Quirk, Secretary-Treasurer of Professional Firefighters in our state, Jeff Buddle, Vice President Greg Russell, President of the National Capital Federal Firefighters, Tom McEachin, former president and a leader in the firefighting community in our state and nation. I want to thank all of them. They're in my state, and I've worked very closely with them. And I want you to know that they keep very much in focus the Maryland delegation on the issues of critical importance to all of you. Because, as I said, you make a critical difference in our communities. You couldn't do it without, however, the fact that you have love in your hearts and courage in your belly to do it. You do it knowing the risks, knowing that tragically we lose about 100, give or take, far too many firefighters and emergency response personnel annually. I know that many of you are in Maryland with me in Emmitsburg. I wasn't there this year. This is one of the first I've missed in a very long time. Honoring the families and those whom we've lost in the course of protecting our nation and our communities. This year, we've lost 23 firefighters already. Right now, firefighters are standing guard, willing to do the same all over this country. They're waiting on duty to protect us if the worst happens. And when we go to sleep tonight, some of them still be waiting up. We get to sleep soundly because they don't. I know it's easy to take that protection for granted because it's so reliable. And unfortunately, too many of our people do take it for granted. So last month, when some in Congress tried to cut the funds that pay for up-to-date equipment, for the latest training, and for firehouses that are fully staffed, I was very proud that I and my party said no. You know the figures. The President's budget for fiscal year 12 set forth $305 million apiece for the Fire Grant Program and the Safer Grant Program. In the Senate omnibus bill, which I was for, which we should have passed, and we wouldn't be in this let's fund government, the largest enterprise in the world, on 2-week cycles. What we are doing in Washington is irresponsible. It is inefficient. It is undermining the morale of the private sector and the public sector. And we ought to be working towards a long-term solution. And when I say long-term, September 30th of this year seems right now to be long-term. But when the new majority in the House of Representatives reported out their bill, they provided $0 for SAFER. Zero. Which meant that they were undermining domestic security while preparing to invest in international security in Afghanistan and in Iraq. That, in my opinion, makes no sense, not only for those who protect us, but for those who are protected, the taxpayers of this country. Bill Pascrell from the state of New Jersey, a great hero of firefighters, in my opinion, offered an amendment which passed 318 to 113, restoring levels to 390 million and 420 million, which were fiscal year 10 levels. David Price offered an amendment. Your president was in my office last year, this year, and on the phone with me on a repeated basis. Kevin O'Connor and David Billy beating up on me all the time, and saying to me, we need to make sure at a time of great economic challenge that we at least keep those domestic defenders on duty who are now on duty. Yes, it's nice to get new people, but if you get new people and lose existing personnel, that does not enhance the security of our communities. And so we included a waiver that not only allowed us to use those funds to maintain personnel levels, but it also eliminated, in the short run, the local match. I was proud to support the fire and SAFER programs because we know they work. In an independent study, the U.S. Fire Administration found that grants like these are making fire departments across the country better prepared for emergencies and better equipped to do their job. Not only can you do your job better, but what we want to make sure is that you can do your job safer. That SAFER grant program is aptly noted. Not only safe for the communities, but very importantly, safe for those of you who risk your lives. It is our moral duty and responsibility to make sure you have the best equipment to keep you as safe and effective as we can possibly make you as you carry out your job. That's not only the least we can do morally, in my opinion, but it is what we need to do to make, as I said, you more effective. I know that these are difficult fiscal times for our country. I know that our debt is a burden on our children, and it's our responsibility to reduce it. I am one of those in the Congress of the United States that believes that we need to turn around this deficit picture that confronts us. But let me tell you something, folks, and you ought to know this. The new crowd in town is focused on a 14% sliver of the budget. They want to cut some 22% from one small slice of the budget. You can't do that in a responsible way, period. I don't care how you slice it. I don't care how you try to sell it. You cannot cut 22%. $102 billion from a $456 billion item, which is the money, all the money when you get past entitlements, interest, and national defense spending. That's all that's left. But our friends that have been newly elected and empowered in the House of Representatives are focused only on that slice of the budget. I think cutting spending is necessary, but you need to cut it smart, targeted. It's part of the answer. But I do not believe that scapegoating public servants like you or other public employees is part of the answer at all. When we pin the blame on our public servants, we're only proving that we don't take our fiscal responsibilities seriously and would rather score cheap political points that do not offer real solutions. How many of you watched television and Mirror Square and Egyptians coming out into that square peacefully for a redress of their grievances? How many of you watched that? All of you watched that? Let me tell you what they were doing. As all of America and all the world looked at them and said, "Isn't this wonderful?" They're coming out collectively to petition their government for redress of grievances. The Constitution of the United States guarantees to every American the ability to do that, but they had been denied in Egypt, and all the world applauded. What were they doing? They were coming together to collectively bargain because they knew their single voice would not be heard. They knew their single voice would not move the Mubarak government. They knew that their single voice would not give them a better wage, a better life, a better democracy. In every free democracy in the world, an active free trade labor movement has been absolutely essential, period. And ladies and gentlemen, that's what we are confronting today. Men and women who have been elected who believe that collective bargaining is not part of the democratic process. Now, we had a card check bill. We passed it through the House of Representatives. It languished and died in the United States Senate. It simply said if 51% plus people sign up on a card and say, "I want a union," they could move ahead. The opponents came out in droves and said, "Oh no, we want an election." All right. Some people said, "Well, okay, fine, if that's the deal." In the Senate, they said, "Maybe we'll do that." Now what are they saying? Not only are they saying they don't want the card check, they don't want an election. They don't want you to have the ability to collectively bargain. They don't want you to have the ability to come together and petition your government for grievances. What is happening in Wisconsin under Governor Walker is not the American way. Now, let me tell you something. I want to quote somebody that most of you are way, way, way too young to have been alive when he was President of the United States. I was, which means I'm not way, way too young, I suppose. You heard I was the youngest president. The problem with that, I'd love to be introduced, Harold, as the youngest president. The problem is, it was so very long ago that I was the youngest president. Dwight David Eisenhower, Commander-in-Chief of the Allied forces in Europe, said this, quote, "Workers have a right to organize into unions and to bargain collectively with their employers. And a strong, free labor movement is an invigorating and necessary part of our industrial society." Dwight David Eisenhower. This is not a Republican or Democratic issue, but I would be remiss if I did not note from a partisan perspective that when the bills come to the floor, there are overwhelming numbers, almost unity, in the Democratic Party supporting the men and women who want to organize or who have organized and want to bargain collectively. Almost total support. That is not the case on the other side of the aisle. In fact, the philosophy on the other side of the aisle is much, much different, and that right does not exist. And they are not consistent with the views of a former Republican president and commander of the Allied forces that won victory in Europe over the Nazis. I respect you. I would imagine that every member of Congress, whoever they are that comes before you, is going to say, "Thank you for what you do." I imagine every member is going to come before you and say, "I appreciate the courage you show." There are a lot of people who talk the talk, gentlemen and ladies. A lot of people talk the talk. But these are serious times. You are a powerful union in America. You're a powerful presence in our communities. And you have a large voice because you have come together and organized. And very frankly, you are making a huge difference for millions and millions of workers who are not organized, who are not paying dues. The American labor movement has made a difference for all workers, whether they joined and paid dues or not. And today, this week, this month, this year, your efforts need to be redoubled, as do mine, because some of the basic fundamentals of our society are at risk. Some of the basic rights of workers are at risk, and we see the middle class status being eroded, income being eroded, security being eroded. That will only change if all of us put our shoulder to the wheel, if all of us talk to our neighbors and friends, if all of us organize even better, even more energetically, even more pointedly in the face of this threat to the ability of average working men and women in America to come together and get a fair shake. I have 3 daughters, 3 grandchildren, 1 great-granddaughter, and a great-grandson on the way. I'm asking you, in those capacities, to redouble your efforts to make sure that the country they grow up in is not only safe, but is a place where they can achieve opportunities. We have an agenda that we call the Make It in America agenda. Now, make it in America, make it. We all say to one another, yeah, we're going to make it, Harold. We're going to win. We're going to seize that opportunity. We're going to have success. We're going to make it in America. Now, the other part of make it in America is I want to see us make things in America. Make it in America. Whatever it is, I want to see it made in America by American workers. So we're in this together. All of us, not just the firefighters, but every other constituent of organized labor. But we're also in this together, every worker in America that wants to see themselves and their children succeed and make it in America. And as we make it in America, I come before you today to thank you for as we strive to make it, you strive to make it safer. God bless you, Godspeed, and thank you very much.